gentlemen, welcome back to the World Cloud Show Africa. My name is Bhavna Bhatia, and I hope that you had a great networking break. You were able to network with one another, visit the sponsor booths, and get to know the concept and the idea a little better about the show. So ladies and gentlemen, with this, we're now on the cross-industry cloud panel discussion, and we are on the topic revitalizing business. Organizations across Africa increasingly using multiple cloud deployments to achieve digital transformation. We're looking at covering choosing the right cloud for your needs, challenges faced by enterprises on maturity when adopting cloud, multi-cloud adoption and modernizing information architecture, maintenance and management of cloud computing architecture, and people as the biggest challenge with cloud adoption. To this and much more, we're joined first up by our panelist, Stanley, who's the Group Chief Information Officer, Jubilee Insurance Kenya, joining us. Well, Stanley has an experience in governance and management and further excels in IT management, business process, internal control, strategic planning, and project management. With this, I welcome Stanley on your stage and screen. Thank you so much, Stanley, for joining us today. Great to have you. Joining Stanley is Oriyomi Fowler, the Group Head of Information Security and Network Operations, Dangote Group, Nigeria. Well, over the years, Oriyomi has helped leadership roles within several technology service organizations, ranging from system integrator to major internet service provider firms. Thank you so much, Oriyomi, for joining us. Also, now joining us is Alice Namuli, who's the partner, head innovation and technology, Kantede advocates Kampala, Uganda. Alice specializes in technology and the law with a keen interest in artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, fintech, cyber law, and data protection. She's somebody who represents several fintechs and blockchain technology-based businesses which are reshaping the mode of doing business in Africa. Thank you so much, Alice, for joining us today. Also joining, pleasure having you. Also joining us is Arafat MU, who is the Assistant Director of Technology, Swahilipot Hub, a community space that nurtures youth talents in technology and creative or arts. Before that, he's somebody who worked as the founding CEO of Brands Technologies Limited, a venture-backed AI tech company. He holds a diploma in medical engineering from the Technical University of Mombasa. Thank you so much, Rafit, for joining us today. You're on mute, Rafit.
Thank you very much. It's such a great pleasure to be part of this panel.
Likewise. And now joining us as a moderator of this panel discussion, we're joined by Steve Uma, the CIO and Head Information Services and Technology, NSIA Insurance Nigeria. Well, Steve is a seasoned IT professional with over 15 years of experience spanning across banking, telecommunications, public and insurance sectors, respectively. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So with this, ladies and gentlemen, if you may have any questions directed to the panel, please feel free to type it up in the Q&A tab. We'll take it up at the end of the session if time allows. But with this, it is time now to pass it on to Steve to moderate with his panel today. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to this event, World Cloud Show. Popularly, when cloud providers want to sell cloud solutions, they tend to make everything look, so rosy. They tell you it's sunny above the cloud. But as IT professionals, it's our prerogative to unravel the fact that there could also be volcanic eruptions, so to speak, below the cloud. So here in this panel, we'll be having some conversations, that border around the due diligence that might be required to ensure that we have, seamless experience as we adopt cloud and multi-cloud in our enterprise. So I would like to start with Stanley. Could you just shed some light as to what we generally understand by these terms, public, private, hybrid clouds?
Thank you so much, Steve. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. So private cloud is the use of hypervisor software like VMware or Microsoft hypervisor to set up cloud-ready platforms in the organization. With the use of VMware, once you're ready to lift and shift the workloads, you can move them very fast from the private cloud into the public cloud. So public cloud would be the offerings from Amazon Web Services being number one, Microsoft Azure being also very top there, Google Cloud Platform, and IBM Red Hat. So you either at the extremes of private cloud or at the extremes of public cloud. But more and more organizations are realizing the need to have a hybrid kind of platforms because they want to harvest the best of both worlds. They want to harvest the benefits of private, they want to harvest the benefits of public cloud, so they have hybrid clouds that are becoming more popular now. With COVID-19 creating new borders, we are seeing more and more organizations moving towards hybrid cloud. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Oriyomi, would you want to share some reasons why we may choose between these cloud options, public, private, and hybrid?
Okay, thank you, Steve, for the question. Following up on what Stanley has said, explaining what cloud solutions are, explaining, the options that we have, private, public, or you have an hybrid setup. The major thing that, people should consider when they are deciding on which of the options to use are, use case and limitations. I always tell people that your use case is peculiar to you. So your business, you need to understand your business. You need to understand what you guys do. You need to be able to explain and translate that into, okay, do you require to use cloud? Because if you look at what people do out there, everybody just says, oh, cloud is for everybody. But in a lot of situations, for instance, in Africa, if you're in manufacturing industry, you already have 24 hours power. You have about 24 hours cooling, and you have physical security. So you're practically taking care of a lot of things. So what you may need next is, let's say, infrastructure, servers and the likes. So you need to consider your own exact use case. So if developing applications, it may be best to actually, use a cloud service for your applications because, yeah, they are public facing and all your customers are everywhere in the world, and you probably want to, leverage on technologies like content-defined network, and also want to, leverage on proper load balancing that is being done by AWS and Azure kind of cloud providers. So you would practically, in that kind of use case, it's advisable for you to use a cloud platform. But if you're developing a solution that is totally internal to maybe like a branch office, and you get there's no need to use the solution when you're at home, that use case does not meet the cloud requirements. So those are things that people need to consider while going there. And then on the limitation, you need to look at what your limitations are. So for instance, your limitation may be regulatory requirements. You could have local regulatory in your country that stops you or limits you from hosting some private data up there in the internet or in another country because they want those data to be residents within their country. So that is a major limitation, and it's a flag against you breaking regulatory requirements. So you need to ensure that those limitations are being considered before you decide on, okay, am I going to the cloud, or am I going to be private, or am I going to have like an hybrid setup? And then your limitation again is can also be skill set. Is one of the major selling points for cloud service providers in terms of you don't skill sets are scarce. You don't need to look for those skill sets and have, you're going to have a DevOps, have an applications guy, have an infrastructure guy, have a data center, a power solution, a cooling. You don't need to have all that. You can just leverage on what they have and then, either subscribe to like an infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. So your peculiar requirement in an organization should be the driving factor in deciding what cloud or no cloud approach for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oriyomi. So I would like to ask Alice. Alice, if your business needs are changing and then you need to transition from one cloud form to another, say public to private, private to hybrid. Are there some considerations that you would like to share with us?
First of all, I wanted to agree with Oriyomi that I think the needs of the business definitely matter a lot. As you've heard from in an introduction, I work in a law firm. So when you look at, like, for us, our profession, definitely a hybrid is the only way to go, because there's so many regulations around confidentiality that definitely govern us as a profession, meaning what you do with actually clients' confidential information. So you'll find that most law firms, big or small, they've definitely gone for hybrid. So you have definitely using the public cloud platforms, but at the same time you have your internal, servers to make sure that at least you're in control of the data, clients' data, and also you're able to ensure that you comply with all the privacy regulations. To go back to your specific question, as in what would you be considering? I think the most important thing is, one of the biggest challenges, of course, is people. When you talk about cloud systems, first of all, how compatible, or what kind of do your staff or employees within internally, do they have actually the capacity to manage the transition? That could be one, because we've seen several companies which have been using one cloud system and being bought off by another. I think the best example I would give is Microsoft buying GitHub, where up to now they still use Amazon. So why? Because I think when they analyze the situation, they realize that it would only make sense with the kind of capacity they have, the kind of employees they have, the staff. They were more comfortable, and all the capacity they had built was for Amazon. So I think it's extremely important to understand the kind of capacity you have, the competency you have also in-house, and also the regulatory requirements. Because again, I think it's Oriyomi who mentioned it. When you handling a lot of data that belongs either to the public or to your clients or whoever you're dealing with in the business, you have an obligation to make sure that data is is very secure, and any kind of mistake can lead to a very big data breach or leak. And so you have to be extremely careful the kind of system or platform you're transitioning to, that it can actually afford you the kind of platform which won't lead you to get onto the wrong side of the law. Most of these international platforms that we use are governed by the GDPR. So in many cases, yeah, definitely they follow the rules, and in most cases you'll be safe. And also when we talk about in Africa specifically, most of the jurisdictions, they have data protection laws that provide or have set up very strict rules in terms of how you actually handle people's data. So I think for me, from my perspective, especially from the regulatory side, you must consider how safe the data you'll be moving from one platform to another is safe. I think the safety issue is extremely important.
Okay, thank you very much. Arafat, do you quite agree that people constitute the biggest challenge in cloud adoption? Would you like to shed some light on that, Arafat?
Right. Very true. I would agree with what Alice said. Maybe to kind of like give an example of a case of Safaricom, when they were transferring their servers from, say, that was from Germany to Nairobi in Kenya, they actually hired 200 engineers from Huawei to be able to actualize that transition. So like there are particular and specific industry skills that individuals are required to have to be able to set up those cloud servers, be able to maintain them, and also, to be able to set up and also maintain them. And probably might realize that there's really not so much kind of like talent out there to be able to achieve this. So it's either organizations have to outsource that, probably if they don't have the capacity. But for example, like a company like Safaricom, they do have engineers, but they still had to go to Huawei to be able to solicit for more talent. So yeah, it's very, very important. Talent is a very, very important factor.
Okay, thank you very much, Arafat. Clearly, you're saying that the people issue is basically focused on talent. Okay, Oriyomi, how do you ensure that your applications continue to perform optimally when migrating to a multi-cloud environment?
Okay, so for your application to perform optimally migrating to cloud environment, I think that's almost a given because by default, cloud infrastructure give you that scalability. You could actually scale horizontally or vertically depending on what your requirements are. I think the major thing here should be about, as I initially mentioned, the use case, what you require. Now, when you're migrating to the cloud, one of the major things you need to have is a checklist. You need to understand which would include a gap analysis of your current infrastructure on-premise, and then looking at how you're going to replicate that in the cloud. A lot of times you see people do a P2V, particularly those copying and moving virtual machines. But I would say instead of doing that, I would say why don't move the service? Because the scalability that the cloud service gives you when you're creating a blog, for instance, on Azure, and how storage is being perceived as an object as against as resources when you're looking at it on premise. So when you look at those kind of instances, your migration plan should be on point in terms of listing out what is required, service needed, the nitty-gritties of the service needed, so that you could migrate seamlessly. And then when you're copying data, one of the major things that you need to have is just don't copy data over the internet. So you need to set up like a either a direct connect, depending on what the service provider calls it. You could set up a direct connect, or you have what that means is have a lease line from your on-premise to the cloud service provider, or you set up a VPN, a layer 3 VPN, and then you could copy your data securely from your on-premise to the cloud. Back in the day, Azure used to have what they call Store Simple. That would have helped you do migration, but I am sure Microsoft doesn't support that any longer. But there are quite a number of other tools that you could actually use to do migration of data and then compressing. And it depends on the application. So for instance, we're moving something like S4HANA, S4HANA has a relational database and it could actually do that itself. The application could, move, copy and, move the databases itself as against you using other native tool to do that copy. So the major bit is, you just have to encrypt your data in as much as it's still going over VPN. And then you understand what you're trying to set up in the cloud. We've had instances where people move servers from on-premise to the cloud, and the next thing they do is they don't check, security groups. They don't check what is attached to the NICs, and then you just see that all the servers that they migrated also have internet service automatically, which means they're open to the world. So a checklist is required, and following the checklist end to end is very important. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Oriyomi. But I would also like to add that legacy applications can also, pose a big challenge when migrating to cloud and multi-cloud. Is there something you would like to say in this regard? Because I'm aware that if you have applications, for instance, that are not compatible with microservices, and then you are moving to a multi-cloud environment where you are going to be using APIs and all of that. Are there some practices that can help, make such a transition seamless?
So if you look at applications, so quite a number of applications that you've said. So if you give an example, if I follow your example, of an application that doesn't support multi-service, or doesn't support microservices, or doesn't support API integration. So let's say legacy application. Legacy application just do virtual to virtual, almost like you're copying an image and you're pasting an image, and then you're starting up the VM. So you're not going to be leveraging on a lot of advantages on the cloud. You're not going to be leveraging on what the orchestration that has been done by either Amazon or Google or Microsoft to do that. What you'll be leveraging on is just using it as a virtual machine. So you create a virtual machine, you just copy what is on premise and you put there. So you can take those legacies. So the other bit you could have is you have quite a number of security flags. So let's say you're using Azure, for instance, and you have like an enterprise agreement. In an enterprise agreement, you start getting notifications around recommendations saying, it's not recommended for you to be using this legacy OS, or you need to upgrade your OS to a particular OS that is more secured. But the truth is, even if you're going the cloud approach, you're moving things from on-premise, you could just copy from virtual machine to virtual machine. So what the cloud is just giving you is another location. So probably in South Africa, if you're using Amazon, or probably in Ireland if you're using Microsoft, depending on the region you choose. So it's almost like running your virtual machine instead of from your data center from in quotes, you could say co-located data center, where you cannot go there physically, but you could feel the experience virtually by going to the platform or the portal to play around with the features and the advantage of what is there. And one of the major things that is required to be noted is everything you have on premise is in cloud, because the difference is just software. Your network, your firewalling, even your appliance. Your appliance, instead of having them physically right now, you can subscribe in marketplaces to buy different type of firewalls. If you don't want to use the native NSGs or WAF that's provided by those providers. Even a load balancer, you see on Amazon do have load balancer, Elastic, and other service provider do have other form of load balancing and disaster recovery. So the major thing here is it takes away that physical presence. You don't have that physical presence. Everything you have, you could replicate exactly in any of the major two service cloud service provider. But you need to have, as I referenced initially, you need to have a checklist that you're checking, and then you're understanding what is available in those platforms. And then you could actually do a mix match to say, oh, I need a load balancer to do more like a global load balancing. If you're going to Amazon, for instance, you have to subscribe to the global server load balancing as against the Elastic, because that would practically just do for service, not a server instance. So you need to do all that legwork, which could take a lot of time because it's very intensive. As I said, you need to have the knowledge and the expertise in those fields to be able to understand what would work for it, because configuration is a major killer when people migrate to the cloud. So you migrate to the cloud and then you notice that what you've done, you're not getting exact replicable experience with what you have. And one of the major things we need to look at in Africa, for instance, apart from South Africa, there is no major data center in Africa. When I say no major, I mean the cloud service providers are really not present in Africa that much. If you look at Amazon, they don't have any data center in West Africa, and neither does Microsoft do have. So you need to consider your latency. Your latency is key because if you use the practical measurement in terms of your physical location all the way to Ireland, for instance, you're going to get about 90 milliseconds. That's using physics. So no matter what you want to do, if your service is latency inclined, so let's say your application is receptive to a latency of over 40, you would have an issue when you subscribe to cloud service provider. So from there, you know that, it's a no-no. You just need to keep it beside the office or keep it within your office data center. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Oriyomi. Stanley, consistency of data and information is another key key deliverable during cloud migration or in the use of multi-cloud. Are there some best practices that you would like to share with us as to how we can achieve data and information consistency?
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. So let me share some best practices when you consider cloud migration. Number one is to understand why you're going to the cloud. Always start with why. You're not just doing it because your neighbor is doing it. Understand the business case about it. What are the benefits? What are the return on investment? Has the board blessed it? Board members, they blessed it. Otherwise, sooner or later, it will come and crack down on you in case you move workloads, the cloud without that blessing. So why? Start with the why. Number two, start with security. Consider what is going to happen in terms of security. The local security and the cloud security. Compare local and what is in the cloud. Do not compromise on security. We talk about the CID, the confidentiality, the integrity and availability of information. So make sure that you do not compromise. Number three, cost. Again, why are you going to the cloud is going to cost you more in the long term than what you have on premise. So consider issues of cost. I mean, the board members always want to hear about cost. Even before they bless a business case, they want to hear about cost as much as possible. Number three is platform reliability. How is it that platform? We're talking about platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. How reliable is it? Consider that. Number four, application performance. You have tools that can measure performance on premise and compare the performance in the cloud. Obviously, it should be better in the cloud, possible, but don't go for less, go for more. Don't go for a small bargain. Go for the biggest bang for the buck. So, application performance, there are tools for that. What about government regulation and data sovereignty? Think about that. You don't want to go to the cloud if the regulator is going to come on your neck. Okay? So consider that. And data sovereignty, they may come there, whether it's central bank or regulation, insurance regulation, they can come and check that you're really in compliance. Industry regulation compliance, again, I've talked about it. Latency considerations, Oriyomi talks about it. Consider latency. Don't go for anything more than 1,000 milliseconds. Consider what you get on a local area network. Okay, the maximum you can get on a VSAT is 540. So consider latency. Organization-driven policy issues. There are policy issues, like Ali said, in every organization. You don't want to compromise on those policy issues, especially data privacy. So best practice, check your organization-driven policy issues. Customer centricity issues. You don't want to compromise on customer experience issues. Okay. Then software and vendor requirements. Listen to what the vendor says and adhere to that, those vendor requirements. So those are the best practices you want to look at. There are more, but I could not exhaust them in this meeting because I know there's the time limit, but these are some of the things you need to start thinking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stanley. Thank you very much, Stanley. Okay, I don't know if you're muted. I lost your voice at some
point.
I'm
happy. Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so Arafat, Stanley just highlighted some best practices. I don't know if you would like to contribute to maintenance. Are there some suggestions as to how we can best maintain our cloud infrastructure? Arafat?
Yes, please, Steve. Yeah, in terms of maintaining the cloud infrastructure. So maybe that would be sort of like, in this case, it implies that it's on the public cloud, sort of like a shared cloud. But then if it's kind of like a physical cloud, sorry, if it's a private cloud, that's kind of like a bit more tricky and more costly maintenance wise, because you're going to think of physical security, you're going to think of cyber security, right? But then if it's a public cloud, so like some aspects of maintenance actually kind of like get to you get to delegate those to the third party that is providing the services. So in terms of maintenance, I think one of the points he said, best practices, it's actually security. So even in terms of choosing the cloud provider, it's very, very important to vet which one has got the most secure cloud. I think that is something that is the most important. And then also matters relating to its security, and also matters relating to reliability of services. So being able to factor in aspects relating to redundancies, right? And I think this is where the aspect of hybrid clouds are also coming, so that in case maybe one kind of like one sort of like provider or cloud is down, at least you can be able now to jump onto the other.
Okay, thank you very much, Arafat. Oriyomi, there are so many regulatory challenges, regulatory bottlenecks that organizations face in the use of cloud. Can you shed some light based on your experience on how best you think some of these regulatory bottlenecks can be overcome?
Okay, so for regulatory bottlenecks in Africa, for instance, I would say one that stands everybody else in Africa, which is because of physical presence of cloud provider, is data sovereignty, data privacy, PII. So the other words for GDPR. Almost every other country do have that now. Nigeria do have what we call NDPR. Kenya do have one, and South Africa does have one also, Poppy Act. If you look at those acts, there are particularly regulations around data privacy, where your data can be stored. I understand that Kenya and Tanzania do have even stricter laws in terms of data centers and cloud hosting, saying that your data center has to be physically located within where you are. And, they're looking at working with cloud providers to be able to come and build those data centers there, so that they could offer these services to their country people, and then other people alike. So the other bits that will probably affect everybody else, like globally, would be PCI DSS. PCI DSS would affect everybody globally, because we do have one or two regulatory requirements that you would not be able to meet if you're practically using only a cloud service. In as much as those cloud providers are certified either with ISO 27001 and all the ISMS in this world with quality, the truth is, because of physical residence of those information, there's a control within PCI DSS that would have issues with. You would also have issues with your business disaster recovery. If your disaster recovery is really checked, we rely on is availability zones and having HAs in the cloud. But the truth is, in the last few years, we've had submarine fiber cuts from Nigeria, for instance, to the world. So there was, a lot of reliance on submarine cables. We keep having investors in submarine cables to the world, but there was a major cut that did affect quite a bit of service providers within this space. So people that totally rely on cloud, for instance, were hugely impacted, because people could reach everybody within the country in Nigeria quite fine, but you could not reach services that are outside the country effectively. Although, with what they call capacity swap, people were able to readjust on time, and then the service provider could restore the fiber loss. But we could always have those kind of force major. So we need to look at that also as part of one of the reasons why we consider either to go to cloud or not. So but in terms of regulatory requirements, is data sovereignty, will I say, subset of GDPR that everybody knows about, that are localized in every country, is the major bit that would affect in adoption for cloud in Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Oriyomi. That was a very good response. Generally, on the closing note, I would like to say that there are quite a lot of innovative solutions bordering around the use of AI and machine learning in cloud adoption. I don't know, anybody can just shed some experience on how you think AI is benefiting cloud or multi-cloud. This is open.
Let me start. AI is really about automation and making us more efficient and simplifying tasks that would have taken days, and those tasks will take seconds. So with analytics, you want to have AI crunching that data so that you reduce number of errors, rework, quality is improved. So, so you want a cloud provider who is compatible with best practices on Oracle themes that come from AI. So by the time you're scouting for a cloud provider, you want to ask them, do you support AI ops? It's called operations systems driven by AI ops. There are such companies that do that. These companies were born digital native. They were born cloud native. So they're not struggling with supporting AI ops. So you want to look at those kind of questions because in the future, it's all about analytics and data-driven decision making. And whether you're hosting your workloads on-premise or on the cloud or hybrid, you are thinking long-term. You're thinking your analytics, you're thinking data, you're thinking business intelligence. And that is not going to be possible without AI. So remember, the cloud is just a container, but behind the scenes, the engine that's going to crunch the data is AI. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the deliberations, and I hope we all found them useful. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you.
Thank you so much.